Chapter 13. A ceramic bust bearing a notable feral expression snapped out from beneath an ornate concrete pillar. Blam! 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 The sculpture exploded into hundreds of white shards as a burst of rapid gunfire blasted it apart. Scowling, Celine waited impatiently for another target to present itself. A whiff of gunpowder rose from the smoking muzzle of a brand new Beretta automatic. Her face still smarted where Craven had slapped her. She had hoped to blow off steam here at the firing range, but so far she felt as irate as before. Only a fierce determination not to stir up more trouble in division had kept her from returning Craven's blow with her own hand. "We can't afford to turn on each other right now," she reasoned. "Not with the Lycans plotting something dire." Another ceramic target peeked out from behind a metal facade. This one bore the bestial features of a semi-transformed female Lycan. Celine's efficiency shot it into pieces, firing continuously until the Beretta slide snapped back. She swiftly ejected the empty ammo clip, grabbed a fresh one, and angrily slammed it into her gun. An amused chuckle came from behind her. "Sure hope you never get pissed off at me," Khan said. The weapon master stood a few meters back from the firing range, observing her practice session with friendly interest. Celine almost smiled, but kept her gaze fixed on the far end of the range. Her finger tensed upon the trigger. She was fully prepared to blast apart every ersatz Lycan in the dojo, if that was what it took to get past the memory of Craven's infuriating slap. "I can't believe he dared to take a hand to me. I've killed more Lycans in the last few years than he has in centuries." "Hold on," Khan said before the next target could claim her attention. "Check this out." Celine reluctantly holstered her gun and turned towards the Khan. The African immortal tugged a wicked-looking pistol from his belt and handed it to her. She balanced it in her grip, testing its weight. A serviceable weapon, she judged, uncertain that what was so special about it. Khan tapped his boot down on a scuffed green button built into the floor. The remote mechanism triggered the appearance of another ceramic target at the far end of the fire range. Sculpted marble fangs accented a frozen snarl. "Go ahead," he said. "Squeeze off a few." With pleasure, Celine thought, needing no urging to fire upon the lycanthropic simulacra. Blam! 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 A tight grouping of bullets hit cratered the target. To her surprise, a shiny metallic liquid oozed from the ceramic wounds, like blood from a shattered skull. "Eject the mag," Khan instructed. Intrigued, Celine did so quickly. Her eyes lit up. The bullets in the magazine were identical to the Lycan's new ultraviolet rounds, except that these were filled with a lustrous metallic fluid. "You've copied the Lycan's rounds," she realized. Khan grinned proudly. She removed one of the liquid-filled bullets and rolled it between her fingers. "Silver nitrate?" "A lethal dose," he confirmed. "Excellent," she declared, her mind swiftly grasping the distinct advantages of a new form of ammo. "So, they won't be able to dig the silver out as they do with our normal rounds?" "Straight into the bloodstream," Khan said with a smirk. Celine foresaw a welcome increase in Lycan fatalities. "Nothing to dig out." She handed the gun back to him. "Does Craven know about this?" "Of course," Khan answered, as if puzzled by her question. "He approved it." Celine was relieved to hear that Craven was taking some interest in the war against the Lycans. She assumed that Khan had presented the idea to Craven while she had been tracking down Michael Corvin in the city. If only I could convince Craven how important Michael is. She watched, lost in thought, as Khan fiddled with his ingenious new brainchild. He racked the slide back, removed the barrel, and proceeded to examine the rifling. Celine leaned pensively against the wall, recalling Craven's odd remark earlier that evening. "Tell me, Khan," she asked after that moment, "do you believe Lucian died the way he did?" Khan's grin widened. "Craven been telling his old war stories again?" As far as he and most other death dealers were concerned, Craven had been coasting on his celebrated victory for nearly 600 years. "That's my point," she insisted. "It's nothing but an ancient story, his story. There's no shred of proof that he actually killed Lucian, only his word." The scornful tone in her voice made it clear how little she thought Craven's word was worth. The implied accusation got Khan's attention. His amiable grin faded, and he shot her a deadly serious look. "Victor believed him. he reminded her, lowering his voice. "And that's all that matters." He carefully put aside the disassembled pieces of his gun and eyed her warily. "Now, where are you going with this?" She had no immediate answer for him, only a vague, unsettling suspicion that Craven was not telling her everything. Perhaps his unrelenting hostility to her investigation was based on more than mere jealousy. "Nowhere," she muttered finally, not wanting to burden Khan with her, as of yet, unsupported misgivings. Shrugging casually, as though the matter was of little import, she drew her barrel and turned back towards the firing range. Her toe tapped the button, triggering the targets. Another ceramic bust popped up. Celine envisioned Craven's spiteful, arrogant expression as she mercilessly shot the target to pieces. It didn't make her feel any better. The incessant rain was not improving Craven's disposition. A never-ending trickle of cold water ran down the back of his neck as he and Soren lurked in the shadows of a dismal alley in one of the Central Pest's less savoury neighbourhoods. Only a few blocks away from the hooker-infested fleshpots of the Matthias and Roxy Square. Broken glass and cigarette butts littered the cracked pavements beneath his feet. Political slogans and vulgar obscenities defaced the sooty stone walls of the alley, while several meters behind him, churning rainwater cascaded over the side of a graffiti-ridden concrete overpass. The only good thing about this miserable weather, Craven reflected, was that it had emptied the adjoining avenues of unwanted tourists, carousers, and street trash. Even Budapest's growing population of homeless indigents appeared to have sought drier domiciles elsewhere. Good, he thought sourly. He hunched beneath his black leather coat, keeping his face hidden behind his collar like a tail retreating halfway into its shell. The fewer eyes that witness tonight's rendezvous, the better. The bells of the nearby clock tower rang out, toiling the hour. Craven glanced impatiently at his own wristwatch. It was nearly 10 p.m. "Where the devil is he?" he muttered to the muscular black-clad vampire standing beside him. Soren shrugged his shoulders. He maintained a tight lookout over the alley and environs, alert to any hint of treachery. Craven was glad to have the wary bodyguard along on this outing, but was anxious to return to Ordegar's as quickly as possible. He didn't want to give Celine cause to question his absence. More rain worked its way beneath his collar, chilling his already lukewarm flesh. Craven was about ready to say the hell with it, to give up and go home, when an ominous black limousine pulled into the curb of the dimly lit street beyond the alley. About time, Craven thought indignantly. His simmering resentment masked a deeper unease. Glancing about fugitively, he slunk from the alley, shouted by Soren. A dark-skinned figure emerged from the driver's seat of the limo. Craven recognized Ray's, a particularly savage specimen of the Wolven breed. The beefy Lycan appeared none the worse for being sliced up by Celine's silver throwing stars the night before. A pity, Craven thought. He had never liked Ray's. Soren and Ray's exchanged hostile glares, two of a kind after a fashion. The lethal warriors hated each other intensely. They were both eagerly waiting for the opportunity to settle which of them was more dangerous. Craven's money was on Soren, merely by virtue of the innate superiority of vampire over Lycan, but he had no intention of letting Soren off his leash tonight. Matters were far too delicate already. Ray's opened the limo's rear door and gestured for Craven to get inside. Craven swallowed hard, unable to conceal his apprehension entirely, and slid into the backseat of the car as Ray's closed the door. Craven could not resist looking back to make sure Soren was still there. Then the door slammed shut, cutting him off from the imposing bodyguard. Chin up, he reminded himself, striving to bolster his spirits. Show no weakness. It is not I who need to fear the outcome of this meeting. I have nothing to apologize for. His throat tightened nonetheless. The interior of the limo was dark and musky. The flickering light of a nearby street lamp feebly penetrated the tinted black glass of the limo's privacy windows. Through the darksome glass, Craven glimpsed Soren and Ray's taking positions at opposite ends of the limo. They glowered at each other mutually. Immortal soldiers nursing their bitter rivalry beneath the driving rain. Craven reluctantly looked away from the window, turning his attention to the business at hand, more nervous about the encounter than he cared to admit. Even to himself, he immediately went on the offensive. Engaging death dealers in public, chasing round after some worthless human, was not what I had in mind, he protested briskly, mustering an impressive show of justifiable indignation. Cold, wet, and dishevelled, he let his physical discomfort fuel the umbrage in his voice. You were told to set up shop and lie low, he continued. Not! A hand exploded from the darkness of the seat beside him, clutching Craven by the throat, cutting off his tirade. A black-clad figure leaned towards Craven, his narrowed eyes showing little patience with the soaking vampire's hysterics. Calm yourself, Craven, Lucian said. As always, his crest-shaped pendant glittered upon his chest. Craven had never seen him without it. The Lycan's fingernails elongated, becoming razor-sharp claws digging into Craven's flesh. The vampire winced in pain. Even as he tried unsuccessfully to yank his throat free from Lucian's powerful grip, he struggled to speak, but could scarcely breathe. Lucian tightened his grip, choking Craven even harder. The human doesn't concern you, the Lycan said calmly, as though he weren't throttling Craven at this very moment. And besides, he added with a wolfish grin, I believe I've lain low for quite long enough. He released his grip at last. Gasping, Craven fell backwards against the padded back of his seat. He glared balefully at Lucian with blood-tinged eyes. Not for the first time, he rued, ever entering into alliance with the loathsome subhuman beast. Someday you'll pay for this effrontery, he promised silently. Too much was at stake to jeopardize their grand endeavor now. But someday, and soon. Recovering his breath, he did what he could to reassert his dignity. Keep your men at bay, Lucian. At least for the time being. Lucian needed to be reminded that he was merely Craven's partner, not his superior. Don't force me to regret our arrangement. Lucian chuckled, clearly unimpressed by Craven's bravado. His nails retracted back to human proportions as he subjected the petulant vampire to a withering stare. You just concentrate on your part, he instructed, his tone brooking no disagreement. Remember, I've bled for you once already. Without me, you would have nothing. His fearless grey eyes dared Craven to dispute him. He spoke slowly, underlining his words for emphasis. You'd be nothing.